In order to achieve long-term performance standards, the Time and Space Management Bureau has made HR work vigorously. However, when it comes to cute new dishes, their lives are always in danger. In order to reverse this trend, the Management Bureau took a big shot and created a new industry. Live streaming. So Bai Cha, who had been thriving in various fields, was forcibly dragged to work by the Management Bureau. In order to make her live broadcast room shut down, Bai Cha chose the most obscure and terrifying world of bizarre stories. Who knew, she jumped to become the top zero in the live broadcast industry. In the end, Bai Cha could only reluctantly accept reality, with tears in her eyes, shouting in the eerie world of strange talk, double-clicking, liking, and following. Today's little ghost, you can touch it. In the remote apartment building, the shattered body was sewn up needle by thread, and the young heart beat again. She looked at him as if looking at the most perfect artwork in the world. In the lost paradise of the apocalypse, he shuttled through the ruins and debris to run towards her, while she stood in front of him, using her flesh and blood to shield him from gunfire and bullets. The virtual phantom continent, with scattered data flying in the air, he desperately wanted to find the traces of her existence, but could only witness her departure. In the pitch-black abyss of the sea, she leaned against a huge seashell, lifting the boy's chin with her fingertips. Her hoarse voice carried a hint of temptation. What can you give me? The boy swayed his fish tail and lay quietly beside her. Give you everything I have. Suddenly, the live broadcast room exploded. Teacher Bai Cha, please keep broadcasting strange stories in the future. I can't watch other worlds anymore. Mine clearance. Not Shuangjie, Shuangqiang, guess it's 1v1. Chapter 1. Neighbors also like me today, 1. You are listening at novel full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 2. Neighbors also like me today, 2. You are listening at novel full.audio. In the world of strange talk, anything unscientific can be done. After all, ghosts and monsters cannot be judged by common sense, and the plot development needs to rely on brushing gifts to make headlines, otherwise Bai Cha would not know the subsequent plot direction. The topic of lack of nutrition began to be discussed on the barrage, but there was a shining VIP barrage that still kept firing the barrage without giving up. I want to touch the hands of ghosts, you can't touch it again. Bai Cha lay flat with her hands spread out, and with a flick of the blanket, she didn't hear anything outside the window. As soon as she closed her eyes, she was about to sleep. She had just closed her eyes when a penetrating female voice echoed throughout the room. Hurry up and touch me. Touch me. I want you to touch your hands. Bai Cha was furious and jumped up from the bed. I'm so annoyed. Long life, didn't I say not to use bullet comments? T&T, wealthy father, we can't afford to be pinched, said Long Life weakly, with a voice as low as a mosquito's call. Bai Cha obediently rubbed her messy and fluffy hair, then picked up her slippers and threw them fiercely against the wall when the next door jingled. I'm so annoyed, do you have any sense of morality at night? Let your children be quiet. The next door remained quiet for a few seconds, followed by a louder sound. Amidst a clanging sound, a crying, I'm sorry, echoed through the sky. Bai Cha was satisfied and jumped on one foot to pick up her slippers from the ground. The barrage paused for a second, and slowly drifted past with the phrase, is it a ghost next door? The remaining barrage only reacted, brushing faster and faster. Who is the child ghost's house where I go? It's so polite, and I'm still shouting sorry. Touched the ghost hands, who knows, it's still a matter of having a sense of public morality. Touched the ghost hands, listening to this commotion, I guess I was fried with bamboo shoots, causing trouble. Touching the hands of ghosts, Can't I touch it yet? Bai Cha took 3 steps and kicked open the bathroom door with 1 foot. The door slammed against the wall with a loud noise, and was held down by Bai Cha's hand as it collided back under the conservation of energy. There was more turbid liquid on the ground, and the dark red sticky residue dragged over the area where the door had just scratched. Bai Cha reached out to press the switch, and with a click, a pale light came on. A black shadow flashed through the mirror, then disappeared with the light in the next second. In the end, the light bulb exploded unbearably. The firelight shattered the glass and smashed it onto the ground. Bai Cha stood outside the bathroom door unharmed, but the vast majority of fragments fell into the bathtub, and his blue and white hand was also smashed in. The cloth on the ground had long been dyed red, and there was a small puddle on the cotton cloth. The cloth, which had been soaked by liquid for a long time, could not absorb any water. Now it has only firmly caught a few fragments of light bulbs. Shaking her hand, Bai Cha entered the kitchen with a broom and a dustpan, looking expressionlessly at the mess. She began to sweep the dirty water and debris all over the floor without any hesitation. I must go to the property management tomorrow to file a complaint. Even if the water pipe bursts and the light bulb bursts, I'll let him see if it's me who will explode next. Then she lifted her head, tilted her head and raised a professional smile. In a friendly atmosphere, she bared her white teeth and smiled brightly, as if the person who had just cursed was not her. Kiss, the work-related injury insurance points are very high. Remember to give roses. Do we need to compensate for the light bulb, isn't it, sister? It seems like a ghost did it. Why don't we pull out the ghost hands first? Will they soak up later? Anyway, pay the points first. I'll go. I'm running out of points. You deserve your love brain from the previous world to score points for the women's library. Woo-woo, but she said good night to me. Bai Cha didn't want to pay attention to these barrage of comments that were not nutritious and full of nonsense. Although bullet comments are all anonymous, there are always a few eye-catching packages whose anonymity cannot stop their brilliance. At night, I couldn't see clearly while sweeping the bathroom. Bai Cha regained consciousness from the chaos and squinted her eyes to look at the mirror in the bathroom. There was always a figure in the mirror. She moved, but it didn't move. I hate dirty, cloudy, and sticky things the most. Bai Cha suddenly started running, swinging the broom she was holding in her hand and inserting it into the bathtub. She grabbed something and pulled it out, splashing water all over her body. Before she could see clearly what she was holding in her hand, the black shadow in the mirror disappeared. This time, it disappeared in front of Bai Cha. Bai Cha lowered her head with a click and looked at the extremely heavy object in her hand. That was a broken hand, soaked in blood and water, no longer as green and white as before, but dyed with a strange red color. The section was flat, and muscle tissue and dense white bones could be seen inside. It was still dripping with unknown liquid, staining the silk nightgown red with white tea. Sleeping trough. Tea lady is mighty. Yeah. It's so disgusting, I can't watch this anymore. Be good, let's not look. White Tea went to the living room, raised his broken hand and opened the light in the living room with his palm. Fortunately, the light bulb was relatively awesome this time, and the whole room suddenly became bright. The floor in the bathroom was sprinkled with clean water, and the overturned dustpan contained only a burst light bulb, with no traces of blood or water dragging it, only dry water stains. The bathtub is clean and tidy, even the drain is closed. The mirror reflects Bai Cha's face, and nothing changes at a glance and a smile. There are no traces of red on the silk nightgown, only a little bit moist, as if everything just happened was an illusion. Except for, the broken hand tightly held by White Tea. Bai Cha raised her hand again, and with the help of the living room light, she could see every blue and purple vein, bulging blood vessels, and slender and fair fingers on her hand. The cloudy liquid on top was no longer visible, and the transparent liquid accumulated in her slightly curled palm along the 10 fingers of her severed hand. It was unclear if it was an illusion. The back of her hand, which had just hit the switch, seemed to have a faint pink color, but this is impossible. After all, it is a hand that has been dead for a long time. She returned to the bed and drew paper from the bedside table, laying it one by one in the area where her hands were broken and wet. The paper became transparent after getting wet, and Bai Cha threw it into the trash can, creating a perfect arc. Looking at the clean broken hand, Bai Cha nodded in satisfaction. "Tell me, where do you want me to touch?" "Touch the bones. I'm curious, will muscle tissue still jump? Is it tight or soft? Could you stroke every finger once? That's what you understand. I don't understand, but I think it works. You're all perverts, right?" Bai Cha felt goosebumps as she watched the dancing barrage, starting from the first request. She placed her broken hand on the soft blanket, then knelt on the bed and gently touched the bone on the broken hand section with her fingertips, as if it had been cut by a knife. The bone section was also smooth. As soon as she touched it, the light in the living room suddenly went out. Bai Cha stopped and turned her head to look at the large crystal lamp, which suddenly turned back on. Bai Cha spread her hand flat again, trying to flatten the bent fingers of the broken hand. She pressed it carefully, afraid of accidentally breaking the body. Fortunately, the broken hand was relatively soft, and at least there was no clicking sound of bone friction and fracture during the movement. "Old rules," Bai Cha muttered, and the next second she saw a small rose X3. She nodded in satisfaction. "Understood. Should we?" Abnormal. Bai Cha also thought the same way. She despised bullet comments and was indeed curious, so she started from the muscle layer of the severed hand and traced her fingers along his blue blood vessels all the way to its fingertips. The severed hand seemed to tremble for a moment, and Bai Cha could feel the ups and downs of its fingertips. The lights in the living room began to go out again, and Bai Cha didn't bother to pay attention. Under the flickering light, she felt a faint excitement. So she slowly opened her 10 fingers and pressed them against the palm of her broken hand, gently rubbing them between them in a slow and grinding touch. The girl held a delicate and broken hand, gently caressing it with a thrilling and eerie beauty. The cold hand was severed, the skin was stiff, and to the touch, it felt like holding a cold drink taken out of the refrigerator, with a hint of still wet steam evaporating under the warm and soft palm of the white tea. So she closed her 10 fingers, and in the perfect fit of warmth and coldness, the crystal lamp in the living room shattered with a snap. There was a loud noise, shattered fragments splattered, and even the bedroom was not spared. In the darkness, only the sound of fragments falling echoed. Bai Cha did not move, only tightly clasped her severed finger. Under the screams of the barrage, Bai Cha moved her body. The fragments splashing on the blanket made a crisp collision sound as she moved, and white tea was unharmed in the entire room. She comfortingly rubbed the back of her broken hand with her fingertips, causing a slight tremor as expected. "This crystal lamp is very expensive, it's the only one in the entire room that's expensive. It's good now, it's gone." Bai Cha murmured a few meaningful words, and her 10 fingers of the broken hand tightened. She casually picked up the broken hand, waved the blanket, and threw it to the ground. "The quilt is useless, we can't cover it tonight," explicitly stated. "I enjoyed watching it very much, little ghost hand, the trembling look is really cute. You're not afraid it's an ugly thing? Impossible. This manual control means that such a good-looking person must not be ugly either. Hello, I am a pervert sending out roses X10, this is the only remaining points for sister, understand? Understood, you're a pervert. White tea. It prevents people from sleeping. Chapter 3. Neighbors also like me today, 3. You are listening at novel full.audio. Bai Cha fell asleep and Xianqiang kindly turned off the barrage voice for her. The live broadcast room did not pause, but the number of barrage gradually decreased, except for a few late-night ghosts. The broken hand was tied to the floor-to-ceiling hanger in the bedroom, and Bai Cha searched the whole room before pulling out 2 shoelaces from her long boots. One was tied to the arm of the broken hand, and the other was tied with a delicate and beautiful bow at the wrist of the broken hand. The time on her watch kept beating, and Bai Cha shrank her body. The room was a bit shady, and wearing a silk nightgown without a blanket, she hugged herself in her dreams. After a long silence, when even the barrage began to say good night to each other, suddenly a golden barrage stopped in the center. Did that hand move? The broken hand did indeed move, and the area around him had already been cleaned of glass debris. He slowly curled up his fingers, starting from his index finger and gripping one bone after another, as if using this hand for the first time. It was stiff and cautious. "I'll go, it's so weird. I saw one hand undergoing bone fracture rehabilitation. Family, watching the play, key points, understand. You are a pervert, right, Dot?" It propped its thumb on the ground and gently pushed it around, with its palm on the ground. A few fingers propped up its arms and moved on the floor, making almost no sound. As it was about to approach the bed, the clothes hanger swayed slightly, causing the broken hand to come to a stop. As it moved forward, the buckle of the shoelace slowly fell off along its smooth and green arm, leaving only a slight purple mark. Breaking his hand, he grabbed the bedsheet and climbed onto Bai Cha's bed. His bones turned white, and his fingers vigorously left wrinkles on the bedsheet one after another. The tense muscles undulated and supported him slowly as he approached Bai Cha, but she grabbed it in her arms with one hand. The broken hand suddenly released its strength and stiffened. The bouncing softness and arms were tightly intertwined. When it moved, it would press down some tenderness, causing her to hold tightly in dissatisfaction. Shocked. When the evil ghost killed someone, she was held in the arms of a girl. The girl moaned and drank, and the evil ghost doted on her with a smile. "Girl, will you still make trouble next time? No, can we see something normal? Can you worry about our sister's life? What if the ghost hands turn around and dig out her heart? Sleeping slut, then the ghost hands wouldn't really want to dig their hearts. What? Long life, hurry up and call sister." The palm of the severed hand was too close to Bai Cha's chest, and the veins of its arm were raised, which could clearly feel the vibration of the girl's heart beating. In the darkness and silence, this sound was infinitely amplified, almost making the severed hand tremble. In her peaceful sleep, she broke her hand and extended her 5 fingers. Her big palm touched her left chest, and under the mournful cries of sporadic barrage, its 10 fingers sank into soft skin. Then it pinched. Pinch it, abnormal. This is a pervert. Naked pervert. I still read fewer novels, which is a situation I have never heard of before. How about we guess what the ghost hand should do next? With a click, the barrage disappeared. The young boys and girls who stayed up late to pursue the drama were stunned as they watched the closed live broadcast room explode. Long Life's phone. Long Life pouted and casually shut down the phone, continuing to lie on the sofa holding a bowl of ice cream and watching his favorite cookie baby. On adult nights, children cannot watch. So others cannot watch either. Humph. He has never touched anything so warm before. The residents living in this building are only oddly shaped ghosts, cold and hard on their bodies. With a punch, their hands ache, unlike this person, who is so soft that they seem to shatter with just a touch. Her heart was pounding, and he also touched his chest, where there was no heartbeat. It turns out that the heartbeat is so loud, so loud. He hasn't felt it well yet. His figure gradually appeared by Bai Cha's bed, and he looked at her quietly for a while. He crouched down and leaned closer to the bed, carefully rubbing against her with the tip of his nose, with a hint of newborn curiosity. The coolness made Bai Cha furrow her brows. She smashed her mouth and shook her head to disperse, then flipped over while holding his hand, pressing it even tighter. His soft, pale face began to produce pink bubbles, as if about to fall apart. He supported the parts of his body that were about to fall off, trying to resist the feeling of placing every part of his body next to her for her to touch well, and then turned around and walked away. He passed through the door of the white tea house, and at the corner of the door stood 3 ghosts listening to the corner of the wall, whispering head to head. The middle-aged male ghost said, "The girl next door is so scary, she's not even afraid of me. The middle-aged female ghost said, when she moved in, the room was very noisy and annoying. The child ghost said, she caused me to be beaten up, sobbing. The male ghost and the female ghost exchanged a glance, grabbing the little ghost's ear and tugging at it while suppressing their voices, saying together, "Stay away from that woman, otherwise you'll be scattered by her. She's not even afraid of Xiao Bai capital." Cough cough. He listened for a while before finally walking out. The little ghost was being pulled up, and seeing him waving his hand was quite joyful. "Brother Bai. Did that sister scare away?" Not mentioning her is okay, but when it comes to her, Bai Cha feels like he's going to shatter again, with a little bit of warmth remaining on his body, or maybe his illusion. Now he can still feel the tenderness of the other hand being held by her, just a slight movement, as if he's soaking in warm water, with bubbles all over his body. So he hesitated and circled with one hand touching the wall, feeling a little inexplicable shyness. "Can we not drive her away? I haven't been with anyone yet." Now the three ghosts didn't know what to say, staring at each other with big eyes and small eyes, as if they had smelled something unpleasant. "Adolescence is here," the middle-aged male ghost commented, and the female ghost walked up and grabbed the shoulders of Bai Cha. With a click, she almost knocked off his head and hurriedly installed it on him. "You are a ghost, she is a human. It's not good for her to stay here for a long time. In case people outside feel like we can all live here, where do we ghosts live?" The female ghost said with some seriousness, as if regretting the 2 pairs of cured meat she sewn, which were pulled down by the ignorant people as if they were human thighs, falling into dust and even changing the taste. The middle-aged male ghost felt the same way, patting his stomach and loosening his belt. He took out a box of 7 Wolf Dog brand cigarettes from his pants and held them in his mouth without igniting, as if trying to pack them. "It's not right, it's not good for the little girl to stay here." "But she's not afraid of us," Bai Cha said in a daze, pointing to the emptiness of her left arm, with a strange blood color on her face. "Look, she's holding my arm, it must be very comfortable for me to hold it. Love brain. How could you be like your mother?" The female ghost gave a slap, and 100 skulls fell to the ground. Before his body could react, he turned and watched his head roll in the dust, sneezing several times. When the little ghost picked it up and handed it to him, he grabbed his hair and patted his face left and right, disliking the dust he had caught. "She doesn't like dirty things, I need to go wash myself," Bai Song said, and as soon as she turned her head, she disappeared. The little ghost had to look at her dirty hands, turn her head to find her mother. "Mom. You also go wash my hands, humph, it's dirty." The female ghost turned her head and took her husband back to the next door. The little ghost was speechless, crying and going to the garden downstairs to spray the heads and wash them white. He didn't forget to run up to the rooftop and poke the little flower squatting in the corner, quietly telling her about the 100 heads emitting pink bubbles. Chapter 4. Neighbors also like me today, 4. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Bai Cha stretched lazily, and the intermittent sleep made her head ache. She sat up, feeling a chill on her body. She lowered her head and held the broken hand in her arms, throwing it onto the pillow in fear. Broken hands, unable to speak, fingers slightly curved, curled up with an eerie sense of grievance. Bai Cha looked at the hanger, which was intact with no traces on the ground. The delicate bow tied with shoelaces on her broken wrist was still there, and after a night of baptism, it became wrinkled. She thought in a magical way, did she take her hand back from sleepwalking last night? I can't just break my hand and crawl into his arms on my own. Bai Cha felt a bit chilly, holding her arm and touching the goosebumps on her body. She casually grabbed a coat from the bedside and draped it over her body. She kicked open the glass shards on the ground with her slippers and worked tirelessly to tidy up this broken family. Long life, have you woken up yet? Bai Cha shouted, her hands sweeping the floor non-stop, her watch ticking with a hint of weariness, and a little boy's voice ringing. Then the live broadcast room opened with a snap. There were not many people in the live broadcast room in the early morning. At this moment, those night owls were still in their sweet dreams of meeting Zhou Gong. Bai Cha swept the last piece of debris into the trash can, looking regretfully at these sparkling crystals. Whether there were lights in the living room was not important, mainly because these small things were quite expensive. She kicked the fallen light frame at the door with some pain. "Did you stay up late last night to watch Cookie Baby?" Bai Cha asked in a calm tone, and with a long breath of energy, she quickly denied it faster than anyone else. "I didn't have it." Bai Cha didn't believe his nonsense. "Then I'll go check the refrigerator and see how many boxes of ice cream are left." Chang Ming had no choice but to admit with grievances, "I just looked at it for a while. I reported that Long Life was still alive at 4 a.m. yesterday morning." With a swish, the barrage disappeared, almost making Bai Cha almost invisible. She blinked and walked to the bedroom to open the wardrobe, picked out a few clothes and threw them on the bed, even covering her broken hand. "I'll get back to you to settle the total." She paused the live broadcast, pulled her skirt up, and hung it on the hanger. As Duan Shou struggled to climb out of the pile of clothes, Bai Cha was wearing a small underwear with her back facing him. Her slender arms were buttoned back with the straps, revealing her fair back and slender waistline. From this angle, one could see her tummy undulating slightly with each breath. Duan Shou somehow crawled back into the pile of clothes, covering herself tightly. By the time Bai Cha dug him out of the pile of clothes, she was already dressed neatly, causing her broken hand to move a little regretfully. The live broadcast room lit up again, and the number of people had increased significantly compared to early morning. Bai Cha took a rough glance and didn't bother anymore. Sitting on the bed, she kneaded her severed finger, took out her phone, opened the contact interface, and called Su Xiaoxiao. The phone answered quickly over there, and before Bai Cha could speak, Su Xiaoxiao coquettishly shouted, "Sister Qing. I want to find you." Bai Cha dug out her ear and casually replied, "Come on, don't bring that fool with a missing string." "I didn't bring him, it was him who insisted on following me." Su Xiaoxiao hesitated, the sound coming from the microphone intermittent. As Bai Cha picked up another clean blanket before it was folded, there was a constant knocking sound at the door. In a hurry, Bai Cha had to put his broken hand into the blanket. Coming. Why come so fast? The phone hasn't been put down yet." She opened the door, and Su Xiaoxiao was bending over and panting heavily on her knees. The phone hadn't hung up yet. She slammed the door shut, grabbed the white tea, and walked away. After drinking a glass of water in the living room, she let out a mournful cry, "I can't stand it. You don't even know, Sister Qing, Long." Dong dong dong, the door was knocked again. Compared to Su Xiaoxiao's urging to knock on the door, this time it was obviously more polite. Su Xiaoxiao didn't open the door and didn't say anything before Bai Cha opened it. As soon as the door opened a crack, it was knocked open wide. Bai Cha retreated back and narrowly avoided a disaster. A man wearing a suit with an unknown amount of hair gel on his head rushed in, glaring angrily at Su Xiaoxiao who was frozen in place. He took 3 or 2 steps in his small room and pushed Su Xiaoxiao's shoulder to the wall to play with the wall, showing his dominance in every move. "Woman, where do you want to escape? Long Jingchen, I won't marry you. If you want to use me as a cover, you can go find whoever you want." Su Xiaoxiao stubbornly shouted, her delicate face tinged with a faint red color, tears hanging in her eyes, almost falling out in the blink of an eye, and her eyelashes were dyed with water. Only Bai Cha knew that she had run too quickly and was tired just now. Long Jingchen looked at her tearful expression and felt as if he had been blocked. He leaned close to Su Xiaoxiao and punched heavily on the wall, causing his white tea to tremble with fear that the next second the CEO assistant would come in and hold his hand to find his doctor friend. "Damn it! Woman, am I not good enough for you? Why do you always want to escape from me? Don't get close to me anymore, Long Jingchen, you don't even have me in your heart." Did you see that? The romantic male and female protagonists didn't open their mouths and said a word for a while without any key points. I ordered it. Bai Cha nodded, feeling uncomfortable without a popcorn in her hand. Next time, make sure to bring some melon seeds with you. Aren't you a white moonlight? He can't even see you. Do you understand that when the male and female leads play against each other, everyone else is cannon fodder? I am a male frequency comeback, you still haven't made much progress, and we've seen more female supporting roles in counterattacks. Every day, you either become a white moonlight or a fiancé AE. Learned, sister. Watching the barrage chat lively, Bai Cha looked around the room bored. The lights were broken, there was no flickering light, the bathroom was not bleeding, and the mirror was normal. She was just about to relax when she suddenly saw a cricket cocoon under the blanket. Her severed finger poked out of the blanket, as if about to come out. She was so scared that Bai Cha ran several meters from the living room to the bedroom and wrapped the blanket tightly. The quilt let out a whistling sound, and the huge sound finally brought the deeply trapped male and female protagonists back to their senses. They turned their heads to look at Bai Cha, their eyes filled with 3 parts confusion, 3 parts helplessness, and 4 parts shock. Bai Cha pressed against the quilt, stiffly patting her hand to make it quiet, while jokingly changing the topic. You keep going, don't worry about me, haha. Shuangjie. Why are you here? This is Shuangqiang, who was shocked to clench his fist. Do you know each other? This is Su Xiao, who is about to cry. This is Shuangjie, who is speechless. You got the wrong person. Shuangjie grabbed the bedroom door and tried to close it, but was grabbed by Shuangqiang, who came forward. He leaned against the door and looked at her from a high position. This woman who took away his heart and mercilessly left him behind. Shuangqiang looked at her with crimson eyes and a trembling mouth. After several twists and turns, he didn't know what to say. Suddenly, he lowered his voice and looked up at Shuangjie's eyes. The hidden affection in his eyes seemed to shatter. He opened his lips and said, "Have you been doing well these past few years?" The above is Su Xiaoxiao's perspective. No, I haven't been anywhere in the past few years. I haven't gone abroad to study, and it doesn't matter whether I'm doing well or not. What are you doing at my house? Bai Cha was speechless as she pushed the door but couldn't move. Shuangqiang's face was injured, and the joints that held the door tightly turned blue and white. The two of them were secretly fighting hard, and neither of them was convinced. The door couldn't bear the weight and made a clicking sound. Shuangqiang, you let out the sunshine. Let go of her. The door of Bai Cha opened once again, and this time it no longer bounced back. It smashed heavily towards the ground, and under the gaze of Bai Cha, who was about to eat people, few broke in. The fair young man stood there innocently, stepping in with one foot and seeing the collapsed door stagnate in confusion, with only another empty sleeve fluttering in the wind. Wow, oh roar. It's a handsome little guy, Bai Cha. The handsome guy picked up my door, it's impressive. Who is he? Shuangqiang squinted dangerously and gritted his teeth. Bai Cha looked over and the young man stepped in, squeezing out a space between Bai Cha and Shuangqiang like a child, staring straight at him. Accompanying him in the performance, the barrage started flashing again, and Bai Cha silently stepped back, pulling her lips as she watched two silly things confront each other. Ignoring the sliding of the barrage, she simply pushed both of them, or rather one person and one ghost, out. But the flowing light VIP sister disagreed. After scrolling through a few carnivals, its barrage became even more exciting, with even special effects popping up. The short words on it made White Tea feel the weight of money. Hurry up and make a big fuss, this is my boyfriend. Bai Cha pounced forward to grab the young man's hand, only to pounce empty. She wasn't embarrassed either. She ran to the other side and grabbed his arm, holding her head high and staring at Shuangqiang. Get out of here, Shuangqiang. I already have a boyfriend. Woman, are you angry with me? Great, you succeeded. Long Jingchen's eyes were about to crack, and he smashed his fist heavily against the wall. With a loud bang, the young man seemed to be startled, his chest straightened even more, and Bai Cha took a deep breath behind him, quietly tilting his tilted head back, occasionally staring at him for fear that his head might accidentally fall off and cause any psychological shadow on the male and female leads. Su Xiaoxiao didn't see it. She was eating melons, and the gossip in her eyes was about to burn through Bai Cha. Bai Cha didn't even know how to act, so she had to grit her head. You're disturbing us, please go out. Bai Cha. Do we have to perform this play? Bullet screen. Love to watch. Chapter 5. Neighbors also like me today, 5. You are listening at novel full.audio. I don't believe it. Long Jingchen roared, his slender body standing proudly with red eyes, pointing to the young man in a trembling voice. Woman, with a disabled person you caught on the spot, do you want me to leave? What's wrong with the disabled person? He's just physically disabled, mentally disabled, not like you. Bai Cha exclaimed defiantly, talking nonsense about the disabled person. His other hand is still wrapped in the blanket, so why is he disabled? If it weren't for fear of scaring the romantic male lead, she would have taken it out and slapped him long ago. Long Jingchen remained silent for a long time. Perhaps his brain was really twitching, and he turned around and walked to Su Xiaoxiao, who was eating melons. With her puzzled gaze, he pulled her into his arms and said, "Did you see me and Su Xiaoxiao together, so you're jealous? You're such a grinding little fairy." Bai Cha's mouth twitched as she tightened her grip on the young man's arm, accidentally pulling it out. She was startled and her body trembled with nervousness. Fortunately, there were short sleeves blocking others from seeing. She secretly poked and thrust upwards, hoping that he could stick it on his own. When she felt almost there, she quickly released her hand and moved to the side, afraid that she might accidentally pull the young man down again. Su Xiaoxiao stepped on Long Jingchen with her little high heel, feeling relieved. Long Jingchen's luxurious leather shoes took shape, and he took a breath. The wicked smile on the corner of his mouth collapsed, but when he turned his head, he could only see Su Xiaoxiao innocently blinking a pair of red rabbit eyes, still grinding his feet hard. She only stepped on the front toe, and Long Jingchen felt the urge to die. However, in front of so many people, he couldn't cry and could only grit his teeth and purse his mouth, with a somewhat stormy demeanor. So he coughed heavily, and under Su Xiaoxiao's sweet gaze, Long Jingchen finally shook and let go of his hand holding Su Xiaoxiao, retreating to the side, suppressing the urge to cover his feet and shout. Looking at Bai Cha, who hurriedly fled from the young man's side, the two of them had a feeling of being brothers and brothers. Then, as if forgetting their lines at the same time, they fell into a strange silence. I don't know why I feel like what I'm reading is not weird, I clicked. I feel like this doesn't even count as Guzeo's romance. What is that, love comedy, or the eerie version? Everyone get out of my room, it's making my head ache. You all. Get out. You stay. Bai Cha ordered to leave, pushing a few people out. Su Xiaoxiao and Long Jingchen were both pushed out, standing at the door with big eyes and small eyes. Su Xiaoxiao crossed her waist with both hands, and the little girl looked at the soft and glutinous girl, speaking arrogantly, "What are you looking at me for? You were also kicked out by Sister Qing." Long Jingchen still stared at the door and asked dryly, "What is your relationship with Su Qing? What else can we have?" "My best friend, my friend." "Why, you are my Qingjie in the moonlight." Su Xiaoxiao waved a finger in front of him, "That's the sister you can't get. Give up, Long Das Ho." Long Jingchen looked at Su Xiaoxiao in confusion, took out his phone from his suit pants, and in the chat box marked as, "The world's best doctor," he typed out a string of green bubbles. "That domineering CEO's love quote you showed me is useless, she hates me even more." The other person replied instantly, "That's because you didn't say enough. Come and learn from me, woman. You're playing with fire." Long Jingchen fell into contemplation as he watched these words. In the room, Bai Cha pushed the male and female leads out and locked the door with her back hand. The young man followed behind her curiously, watching her movements and pulling at her clothes to play with himself. "What do you mean by putting your hands in my room?" Bai Cha questioned, patting away his hand, playing with the hem and embracing his arms. He rubbed his slapped hand against himself, and the tall person lowered his head like a scolded child in front of Bai Cha. Occasionally, he lifted his head and secretly looked at Bai Cha. "They told me to scare you away." "Who are they?" Bai Cha asked. The young man quietly peeked into the bathroom, revealing a small crack. A large black eye was staring at the two of them, and Bai Cha kicked the door with a loud bang. Ignoring the child's howls coming from inside, he looked back at the young man. "Keep talking about you. It's the neighbors who say that the entry of live people seriously affects the quality of life of ghosts, so they want me to scare you away." The young man stood honestly, but his other hand nervously pressed against the wall, taking off a piece of white tea wallpaper. Bai Cha's eyebrows twitched, and she rubbed her temples with a headache. She opened the door with her back and ignored the two people who had not yet left, pushing the young man out. She put on a look of disgust and didn't pretend in front of them, with her middle finger pointing high. "You three, no matter how far away you go, don't bother me with any play," she said. Then he slammed the door tightly in front of them, and the sound of the door closing startled the young man. He leaned his head back and was about to fall, narrowly holding on to it. With lingering fear, he touched his skull and turned his head to find Su Xiaoxiao staring at him with his mouth wide open, trembling and unable to speak. He found it amusing, turned around to tease her, pulled his head back, and could see the blood-red muscle section and pale bone fragments around his neck. Without any surprise, he heard Su Xiaoxiao's almost scared screams. The woman's mournful scream scared him to let go of his hand and his head came back, but it was slightly crooked. "Oh my God, there's a ghost." Su Xiaoxiao's voice was hoarse, and she leaned against Long Jingchen's side for a rare time, pulling him trembling. Long Jingchen, who was contemplating on his phone, didn't see the scene of his head being cut off. He just looked inexplicably at Su Xiaoxiao, who was hiding behind him and pointing to the young man with his head tilted in front of him, looking helpless. Amidst the cries of the young girl ABA, he was blessed to the heart and placed his hand on Su Xiaoxiao's shoulder with dignity. After hesitating for a moment, he said the newly learned word, "Woman, are you playing with fire?" Su Xiaoxiao was taken aback for a moment, her crying cat-like face froze. In the silence, her eyes turned black and she said, "Long Jingchen, are you sick?" Then he lifted his knee and hit Long Jingchen's lifeline, which was a punishment. Long Jingchen didn't expect it, but fortunately, he was tall, and Su Xiaoxiao could just kick his thigh. But it was enough for him to be frightened and his subordinates instinctively felt down. With a fierce move, the young man frowned and his mouth curled to the spot before disappearing. Su Xiaoxiao was stunned as she watched the scene, crying and burping, taking advantage of the gap between Long Jingchen's practice of Wudong divine arts to slip away quickly. Scared to death, no one is reliable. "Ah no, it's strange," I was scolded. Bai Cha rubbed her nose and went back to bed, stretching out the blanket. She looked at her hot and slightly pink hand, which was covered, and fell into contemplation. "I forgot to return it, this indicates that there will be another meeting." Bai Cha picked up the broken finger with disdain and said, "Why do you all like to watch little ghosts so much?" I just zoomed in and saw that it was a handsome ghost. The fine black hair, deep facial features, fair skin, and the word limit on the male lead's thin lips. Thin lips lightly pursed, eyebrows furrowed tightly, and when facing you, he was also careful. So big, cute and obedient. Aren't you tempted? Not tempted. Bai Cha vetoed, even with a broken hand, he didn't like it and threw it to the bedside table, then went to bed. It's a bit like Long Jingchen, a failure in writing, a great failure in writing. Maybe the two of them are brothers. Anyway, nothing strange happens in this world. Breaking his hand, he secretly moved and rolled onto the bed, sticking it to white tea. He rubbed the back of his hand as if pleasing, but was pushed away with his elbow as if he was disgusted by white tea. It was not discouraged. It shook and rolled back, and continued to rub its 5 fingers, which were almost twisted into fried dough twists. Woman, I hate you for having a heart of stone. Oh. Chapter 6. Neighbors also like me today, 6. You are listening at novel full.audio. Su Xiaoxiao ran very fast, and the young man who had just become physically and mentally disabled also disappeared. At this moment, only Long Jingchen, who was physically and mentally disabled, was left on the empty corridor. He looked at his crotch with lingering fear, and said it was very dangerous. He couldn't believe the nonsense of, "Woman, you're playing with fire," anymore. Long Jingchen calmly clicked on his phone and immediately blocked the contact person with the note, "World's best doctor." After receiving the phone, he felt frustrated and changed the note to, "Dog doctor." With a cold snort and looking around, he finally didn't leave. Even after touching his pocket, there was no choking thing, so he had to take a step towards the rooftop. After all, his father told him that the rooftop is a treasure trove for men. Although he doesn't know what it means. But this does not prevent him from wanting to blow a cold breeze now to ease his seemingly heartbroken sadness. Twice. Is it time to go out and push the plot now? The plot is different from what I saw. I thought you were used to it. Click on me. This time has nothing to do with me, it's obvious that I just arrived, said Bai Cha with a strange expression. The plot collapse this time is indeed a bit strange. It is just an ordinary romantic story. After receiving the gift, Bai Cha can already see the plot outline. It is nothing more than Long Jingchen falling in love with Su Qing at first sight in college, but Su Qing does not like Long Jingchen. After studying abroad, Long Jingchen met Su Xiaoxiao, who was still a small employee at the time, in the company. Her appearance, resembling Su Qing, caught Long Jingchen's attention. During the chase, the two of them had misunderstandings on and off, not saying intelligence, not talking. And Su Qing has never been Su Xiaoxiao's best friend. She was never a easy to mess with white moonlight from beginning to end. Under the pretext of helping Long Jingchen in school, he broke into his life and felt that if a man got it, he would not cherish it. He deliberately revealed his whereabouts and went abroad, where he met the male lead's brother. After returning to China, he saw the married male lead and tried everything possible to separate them. Is she smart? I'm quite clever. When I saw the female lead, I knew Long Jingchen couldn't forget her and used it to provoke their relationship. She is also a fool. Although her family and appearance are all the best, she matches the male lead's family and has the attribute of white moonlight, but she plays poorly with a good hand. However, Bai Cha does not care about the emotional disputes between the male and female protagonists. She only wants to know why romance novels continue in a world of strange tales. And what exactly caused the collapse of this world? Then let's go out for a walk and meet my good neighbors. Bai Cha sat up with a thud from the bed, picked up the severed hand with his fingers tied in knots, and went out. When I walked to the door, I stepped back and suddenly opened the bathroom door. Inside, it was pitch black. I don't know where the little ghost from earlier went. She shook her head and walked out of the door with a proud shoulder, holding the broken hand at the base. This floor is a small apartment with a long history and belongs to a moderately prosperous family. Su Qing should have run away from home now, and the money she carries is just enough to buy a 100 square meter small house. A haunted house. Speaking of which, this was chosen by Su Xiaoxiao. The small building is not high, only about 8 floors. Even if you jump off the top floor, you may only end up half paralyzed. The building where Bai Cha is located is on the 5th floor, and there is no elevator here, only the staircase where the old drawstring light is located. Bai Cha pulled a rope at the stairwell, but with one effort, the rope fell off and the light didn't turn on yet. The place chosen by the female protagonist for you to live is also too shabby. Yeah, she didn't mean to, did she? White cut black. Is it also a play directed and performed by Shuangjie that she became her best friend? No, I think she's probably not really smart. Taking a glance at the barrage, Bai Cha scratched her head and repeatedly tapped her shoulder with her broken hand, without considering any conspiracy theories. With Su Xiaoxiao's temperament and intelligence, it is probably impossible to do such a thing. It is probably someone else's fault. That person is the one who wants to harm Shuangjie. At least that person must know that this apartment is not clean in order to make Shuangjie die quietly. Sister. Look at the 6th floor, there. Is there someone lying there? But it's not certain who died now. Bai Cha walked to the corner of the 5th floor, paused in her footsteps, and her gaze shifted upwards. A woman was lying on her back in the cramped space of the corridor on the 6th floor. Her long black hair was scattered on the ground, winding down the steps, her head shaking violently. As her shoulders moved away from the ground, her head showed a strange rotation, and the sound of bones breaking hit the cochlea. Her head, which was facing up, rotated 360 degrees, accompanied by a strange clicking sound. She looked up at Bai Cha. Her limbs were twisted and deformed, and every part of her body was undergoing a terrifying rotation. The sound was particularly clear in the empty stairwell, and in the endless darkness, the light on Bai Cha's head began to flicker. With the pale light, Bai Cha could see the twisted woman laughing eerily. Her face was covered in dried black blood stains, and blood clots were falling down with her movements. Sleeping slut, so disgusting. This kind of death method is too torturous. Should we run now? No fear. As long as the brave girl takes maternity leave, you can see how beautiful her eyebrows and eyes look. Speaking more about maternity leave, what do we sisters use? Phantom limbs. Hee, not running is a fool. Bai Cha stepped back and turned around in one breath, waving her arm to throw the broken hand on her shoulder to the 6th floor, accompanied by a strong breath of, "Go ahead, hand." Its gurgling rotation happened to fall in front of the female ghost. Then Bai Cha jumped down the stairs in a few steps, and on the 5th floor, she slammed on her neighbor's door, pinching her throat and pretending to open the door and check the water meter. There was no sound, everything was quiet. Bai Cha was thinking of ghosts knocking on 4 people and knocking on 3. Just as she was about to make up for it again, the door trembled and opened. A pair of big black eyes appeared in the crack of the door, touching the furry head of a child who was only about 1 meter tall. "Who are you looking for? You can't check the water meter without your parents at home," he said. "I'm here to find you." Bai Cha grinned and searched for a slightly flavored fruit candy on her body. She couldn't help but hold it up and opened her eyes in front of the little ghost, lying. "I'm lying to you. I'm not checking the water meter, I'm your neighbor. I haven't seen you give gifts since I moved in. I'll make up for it today." The little ghost reached out a hand through the crack in the door, and before he could even get the candy, Bai Cha withdrew his hand and coaxed him gently, "Aren't you inviting me in to sit down? At least the neighbors will have a scene. I know you all like me. How about you let me sit down and I'll give you the candy, orange flavored. Cheating children, bad women. Have you never eaten candy as a ghost? Mom and Dad are not at home, what if you're a bad person?" The little ghost pouted, and the door opened a little wider. Bai Cha seized the opportunity and dodged his elbow to press against the door, forcing himself into it under the surprised gaze of the little ghost. With a bang, Bai Cha locked the door tightly and pressed the light in the entrance. The dark room lit up, which was different from the haunted house she had imagined. The room was bright and warm, clean and dustless. She bent down and hugged the little ghost she wanted to run away from, her mouth not polite at all. "It's bad, who can harm you? I'll tell your parents later that you sneak into my bathroom and hide behind the door to watch me change clothes." Does this count as kidnapping children? How can adult affairs be called deception? This is called reasonable socializing. When it comes to sophistry, if anyone disagrees, they will obey you. No, it's not. The little ghost defended himself, stuttering his neck and flapping his legs. White tea was tightly wrapped in a knot, and he couldn't jump off. I didn't watch you change clothes, you're clearly chatting with Brother Bai. White tea peeled off the sugar paper with one hand and stuffed it into the little ghost's mouth. Then you admit you went in. The little ghost was holding sugar in his mouth and suddenly fell silent. His dark eyes were fixed on the white tea, and the candy rolled around in his mouth. He buried his head in the shoulder of the white tea quietly. Bai Cha didn't understand why he suddenly stopped talking. She lifted his buttocks up to make him feel more comfortable, and sat on the sofa at the little ghost's house without any hesitation, patting the little ghost with her hands. It's a strange and somewhat childish illusion. Chapter 7. Neighbors also like me today, 7. You are listening at novel full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 8. Neighbors also like me today, 8. You are listening at novel full.audio. Bai Cha seemed to be at home, calling the two ghosts who were stunned over, carrying dodo and running around, borrowing flowers and offering them snacks from the kitchen. With a big wave of his hand, he said, eat whatever you want. The two ghosts nodded blankly, then suddenly felt something was wrong. They stood up from the sofa and said, no, how did you get in? Dowdu, didn't you want to keep an eye on the house? What did you see? Dodo sucked on the sugar bean without saying anything, but he defended with a vague tone, I watched the door. She said she checked the water meter, so I let her in. Who went to the ghost's house to check the water meter? The two ghosts glanced at each other, rolled up their sleeves, and were about to take action. The little ghost let out a mournful cry, Sister, help me. The little hand held on to white tea tightly. She stuffed him with candy like a white tea reward before putting him down. She patted his buttocks and asked him to play with him. She wanted to chat with her parents. You're not allowed to talk about me sneaking into your house. The little ghost lay on top of her and whispered in her ear. I won't say it, Bai Cha promised, pulling the hook with his little finger. The little ghost stumbled and walked away, and Bai Cha picked up a chair from the table and placed it in front of the sofa. He sat cross-legged, and the two ghosts sat back on the sofa, bowing their heads for a long time without speaking. I don't mean anything else, I just want to ask. My water pipes and lights have been exploding these past few days, and they are still leaking water. I sprinkle a lot of black, red, and black rust on the ground. Have my good friends, neighbors met before? No. The two ghosts shook their heads like a tambourine. There was also a man who broke his hand and trespassed into a residential house. My door was almost broken. Speaking of which, I happened to pick up a hand a few days ago and wanted to see if my friends, neighbors knew about this. I don't know, the two ghosts quickly denied. When I went upstairs, I saw a big girl lying on the floor sunbathing, so soft and fluffy that she was about to fall apart. I wanted to ask where she lives and how she sleeps at the staircase. I'm not sure. The two ghosts refused to admit. Oh, your child sneaked into my bathroom to see me. Bai Cha covered her mouth and said the wrong thing. Now the two ghosts stopped pretending to be deaf and mute, and the female ghost patted the table and stood up. What? Didn't we say we shouldn't let him scare humans around? The male ghost wiped his sweat and tugged at his wife's clothes. Pay attention to the occasion, wife. Keep your voice down, he said. The female ghost stopped teasing and held the hand of Bai Cha. Sister, to be honest, you're not afraid of us anyway. We're ghosts and have lived here for years. If you encounter any difficulties, just tell us. I'm really just here to meet my neighbor, Bai Cha said innocently, shaking her hand sincerely. I didn't expect you to explain everything. So I really have something to ask. How did you die? This question is too straightforward. To tell ghosts how you died, according to the usual strange saying, is pure death. Don't worry, this is the world of romance novels. As we all know, the world of romance never dies. Understood, they torture their hearts, bodies, lungs, kidneys, etc. In winter, they swim in the sea, in summer, they burn villas, jump off buildings, and they can't die from diving. White T's eyes were filled with tears, and she held the ghost's hand with sincerity and enthusiasm. Sister, you've been living here for so long. Tell me who caused you trouble, and I'll take care of justice for you now. Believe me, I'm actually a daughter of the Sioux group. There's nothing I don't want to do that I can't do. I'll definitely reveal the truth. The female ghost didn't expect Bai Cha to say so. She looked at her husband, and the male ghost paused. He tore open his clothes, and there was an unhealed scar on his left chest. The white knife goes in, the red knife goes out. He said heavily, and after a while, he gave a simple chuckle. I used to think it was exaggeration, until when my wife pounced on me, the knife came out of my chest. Empty. Fate, it's just gone. 22 years ago, this small building was also a high-end apartment with a good location, and there were many schools nearby. Around an alley was a commercial street, and housing prices skyrocketed. Many successful small business people liked to buy apartments nearby. Dowdu's family is also one of them. They are honest and kind people. They earned a little money to buy a new home and happily moved in. Xiadudu is attending elementary school nearby, and the couple is not far away. The company is just a two-step walk away. That day, a strange woman came to the small building. She has a big belly, carrying luggage, and even when moving, she is the only one on her own. She knocks on doors and gives gifts, doing everything without any leakage. Even her smile is faint, and her face always shows a worried expression. Someone asked her, "Where is the man from your family?" She shook her head and remained silent. Later, rumors began to spread in the building that her man had died, so the girl didn't say anything. When she was 3 months old, there was a murder case in the building. A little girl living on the top floor jumped out of the building, causing a big uproar. The girl who died was Ouyang Hua, the daughter of the real estate contractor of the building. The Ouyang family sent countless people to investigate, but in the end, the case was unexpectedly closed. The people inside the building are in a state of panic, while those outside cannot avoid it. After all, no one dares to live in the house of a dead person. A wave of people walked through the building, and among the remaining residents, there were Dowdu and the woman with a big belly. Since Ouyang Hua's death, no one has seen her leave this room. Until one day, there were heart-wrenching cries and the sound of people hitting walls and door panels in her room. "Why don't you go take a look?" Dodo's mother said anxiously. The sound in the next room was too loud, and she drove Dodo to her own room to do homework, but the commotion made no one uncomfortable. Dodo's father held Dodo's mother, feeling the sound of the next door shaking the sky and earth. The woman's sharp cries would sound every once in a while, making it difficult for the young couple to sit still. "Has she given birth?" "I haven't seen her leave recently, let alone go to the hospital." The voice gradually weakened, and the young couple was a bit scared. They leaned their ears close to the wall and could only hear a faint sobbing sound from the next door. Dodo's father couldn't sit still, comforted his wife, and ran to the next door to knock. "Big girl, what's wrong? Has the child been born?" The door knocked, but it didn't seem to lock either. He pushed the door open, and he couldn't even dream of the scene inside. The bloodstains formed by climbing all over the floor, a woman who had given birth but still had a belly, her umbilical cord extending from her bloodstained skirt, connecting to the weak breathing baby she was holding in her arms. Beside the baby, there were scattered small hands and feet from him. Blood flowed all over the ground. She was holding a kitchen knife in her hand, and with a crazy expression, she chopped off the baby's head. The little head spun around on the ground with a gurgling sound, and finally stopped at the man's feet. The man could see clearly what the last emotion the blood-stained baby felt before passing away was. It's pain. You're crazy, call the police, call the police. A big man was frightened by the bloody scene in front of him and fell to the ground. His eyes were black, and his legs were so weak that he couldn't lift them. The woman threw the dead body of the baby, and the body slid down from her. With blood all over her, she held up her knife and ran frantically over. The man could see the umbilical cord dragging under her body, and as she moved, a red blood mark was drawn on the ground. She rushed towards the man, muttering words he didn't understand. Her strength was amazing, and her hands were like lifeless skeletons grabbing him tightly, lifting the knives in her hands. Husband. The door to the next room opened, and Dodo's mother was shocked as she watched the knife enter the man's heart. She screamed and rushed forward, tears not even in time. The crazy woman had already pulled out the knife, splattering blood and muscle tissue. The man did not die immediately, and even now, he is still shocked. He covers the knife wound on his chest and no longer feels his presence. He just instinctively grabs the woman's leg with his hands and drags her when she is about to harm Dodo Mama. What did you do? What did you do? Dodo Mama cried and wanted to run to the man's side. She just kept screaming and howling, trembling with her phone in her hand. She only had time to dial out the 3 digits of 110, and the crazy woman reluctantly raised her knife again. Her legs were still being grabbed by the man, who was already dead. Her eyes were red as she looked towards the direction of home. Her wife was thrown to the ground by the woman, her legs twisted and deformed, and she had been torn off by the man. However, the woman seemed to feel no pain and persisted in killing everyone, just like her own child. She wanted to chop off her wife's head, and the kitchen knife was deeply ingrained in her flesh and blood, but she was not a baby, and a single blow could not end her life. My wife's throat was filled with blood, and the knife was pulled away. Her senses became dull, but she could hear a clicking sound in her throat. She wanted to swallow the blood, but the source of blood kept overflowing from the opening in her throat, blocking her organs. She choked to death with her own blood. At the moment before their death, they heard the sound of a police car coming from afar. Chapter 9. Neighbors also like me today. 9. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The room began to silence, and the barrage never stopped when they started talking. Bai Cha had no intention of watching the barrage, but simply listened quietly to their narration. This was like uncovering someone else's scar. Bai Cha opened her mouth and hesitated for a while, unsure of what to say. She has walked through so many strange worlds and heard such voices from the victims more than once while searching for the truth, so she deeply knows how painful it is to be powerless. Comfort. People are all dead, what's the use? Find out the real culprit. But what can this soothe them? Do we still have to blame why 2 people can't beat 1 person? This is just a narrative. Who can know the situation when something really happened at that time, and what would happen if we encountered ourselves? In the end, she just asked lightly. What about the beans? I'm starving to death. Daodu's mother said that her eyes were red, and Daodu's father wiped away her tears with his fingers. She choked up and couldn't speak a few times. Daodu has never come out, and others don't know. We don't know how long Daodu stayed alone in the room. When we found ourselves in this state, there was only a small corpse lying on the bed in the room. There were many people walking in the building, the door was closed, and there was so much food in the kitchen. Bai Cha couldn't imagine how a child would lie in bed to welcome death in the midst of hunger and despair. Do you feel like you're not hungry when you're asleep, or do you hope that your mom can pull him up and eat the next second he falls asleep? The child is so pitiful, isn't it just food, auntie? Eat. Take big bites. No wonder it's so quiet after feeding candy. The child is so hungry and scared, crying. Don't be so good. Send out the snack gift pack X5, Bai Cha pursed her lips as she watched the barrage. The tragedy of this building was intertwined, and she secretly hid her snack gift package into the sofa while keenly sensing something. The bullet screen says that Su Xiaoxiao and Shuangqiang are best friends, but the plot states that they are not best friends at all. There is no mention of this building in the story, only a hasty explanation of Shuangqiang's ultimate destination. Going crazy in the building and staying in a mental hospital. Crazy. She went crazy in a group of ghosts who didn't want to harm anyone at all. Why can't she move out? Bai Cha carefully considered the possibility that Shuangqiang was too timid to be scared by ghosts, but after careful chewing, she found that there were always logical problems. The name of the second male character in the plot actually connected her. Ouyang Xiu. It is the same person as Ouyang Flower who jumped from this building. It seems necessary to meet the female ghost lying on the ground sunbathing. Big girl, what else do you want to know? Dad Daodu grinned foolishly, his shirt buttoned tightly. If it weren't for his pale face, perhaps no one would have noticed that he was dead. The world is unpredictable, Bai Cha thought. The 5 snack gift packages couldn't be hidden anymore. She simply magically took them out in front of the stunned 2 ghosts and solemnly handed them over to them to feed Little Bean. After thinking for a moment, Bai Cha stood up and said, I roughly understand. Is the room I live in the same place as that crazy woman? The second ghost nodded and asked, is that house originally owned by another ghost? He's been sleeping on the rooftop recently. The female ghost clapped her hands and a voice rang out from outside the door. Auntie, do you call me? The male ghost opened the door, scratched his head and prepared to enter. His arms were still alive, and Bai Cha noticed it at a glance. Seeing Bai Cha standing in the house, Bai Shou's movement suddenly froze, and his stiff skin turned into a powdery appearance. The male ghost saw him standing at the door, motionless, reaching out to pull him out. He didn't pull, but accidentally broke his hand off again. He put his hand on it, and Bai Cha was still emitting pink bubbles at the door. Bai Cha looked at her speechlessly, then turned to the female ghost and said helplessly, I said I didn't do anything to him. Do you believe me? Nonsense, you've penetrated someone. Report the anchor opening their eyes and talking nonsense. After more than 20 years of love, young men have just started to fall in love. Please let him go. The female ghost accepted well and pushed Bai Cha to the door. Bai Cha understood and had to go down the slope. Steps. Yo, love is just beginning to bloom, and she can say anything and bully ghosts and fools, then I'll take him with me first. She gently wrapped her silly arm around Bai Shou, paused for a moment before continuing, Auntie, goodbye. Bai Cha turned around and pulled Bai Shou into her own door, causing the 2 ghosts to look at each other. The male ghost trembled and said, I've been shouting big sister for so long, and now she calls me uncle. What does that mean? The female ghost rolled her eyes and said, oh, you don't know anything about young people, do you? I really don't know how you got married. The female ghost walked away gracefully, while the male ghost closed the outer door thinking that he had bought a cart of roses when he married his wife. The broken hand ghost does not appear in the story. Bai Shou sat on the sofa, stirring with both hands, while Bai Cha entered the kitchen and used a pot that was bubbling to cook health milk tea, deceiving herself into overestimating her nutritional value. After putting ginger slices and goji berries into the pot, she had some free time to take a look at the barrage. The barrage is discussing the identity of ghosts outside. Didn't he mention him in the plot? Is he Ouyang Xiu? Impossible, Ouyang Xiu is the second male lead. At this point, he is probably still thinking about how to pursue the female lead. Every part of his body is broken, what kind of injury is this? Bai Cha took a sip of milk tea, and the milk skin on top was just right. She licked her lips and gestured towards the barrage with her middle finger. Fool, don't you know the process yet? You've wasted your time reading strange stories. You've wasted your time on the surface. As mentioned in the story earlier. I didn't mention the death of a man. The barrage retorted. That's right. Bai Cha put the health-preserving milk tea into a porcelain cup and carried it out on a tray, with a soft and melodious voice. That baby who was dismembered by a crazy woman might be a cute boy. The barrage raised a huge uproar. Bai Cha handed the cup to the reserved man and sat on the sofa, blowing away the heat from her cup. What's your name? 100, 100 is 100, 100 means many heads, he answered honestly. Bai Cha approached Bai Shou with a smile, teasing a child with a coffee spoon. Facing his expectant gaze, as the two were about to touch each other, she turned her wrist and scooped away the milk from the cups. Your name is really strange, she said truthfully. This name was given to me by my aunt, uncle, Daodu, and Xiaohua. He took a sip of milk tea, smashing his mouth and mouth, without any intention of being scalded. Xiaohua said she hopes I have 100 hearts, her uncle said she wants me to have more brains, her aunt said she hopes I don't have a crazy disease, and Daodu said she hopes I don't go hungry. He takes matters seriously. And then what? Bai Cha asked. Then they named me 100 songs, hoping that I have 100 minds and can guarantee that I am very intelligent and worry-free. White Tea applauded, wow. It seems that these ghosts have put in a lot of effort in educating the 100 songs, so the lack of a single string in the 100 songs brain may be hereditary. My name is Shuangqiang, Bai Cha said, nodding Bai Shou. I know. No, you don't know. Bai Shou tilted her head and looked at Bai Cha with a pair of pitch-black big eyes, like beams. Bai Cha's heart was soft and obedient. She placed her hand on his head and rubbed it randomly, not afraid of rubbing it off. I have another name. She got tired of playing and whispered to Bai Shou, I'll tell you later. Chapter 10. Neighbors also like me today, 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are actually many types of strange stories, and this world is probably a very simple one. However, there have been some mistakes, Bai Cha thought, perhaps there is a certain reason because of her arrival. Bai Shou entered the room and obediently slept, and Bai Cha placed him in his own room. Which can also be said to be his original room. She went to the kitchen to get a bottle of bubble water, grabbed the iron ring with her index finger and broke it open. Bubbles rushed out in a hurry, and she gulped down twice, letting out a sigh of relief. It's obvious that there are two storylines going forward now. Bai Cha finished drinking and sat on the sofa shaking the jar, with his right leg resting on his left leg and telling the barrage. The first one is the original storyline, which is that Shuangqiang went abroad to study and indulged in hard-to-get, but missed a good opportunity and transformed into a cannon fodder female supporting character. Finally, she entered the first line of a mental hospital. The second type is the direction of the novel you mentioned. When we know the plot direction, we are not considered spoilers, right? Let me supplement. The barrage continued with Bai Cha's words, piecing together the second plot direction from one sentence to another. Shuangqiang and Su Xiaoxiao are best friends. Shuangqiang did not study abroad and they met in college. Yes, I remember Shuangqiang ran away from home because she refused to go abroad and even refused to get married after graduation. Bai Cha made a stop gesture and said, why refuse, because it's not with Long Jingchen. Yes, she likes Long Jingchen, of course, there is also a reason. It's because she hates Ouyang Xiu white tea. Are you marrying the Ouyang family? Ouyang Xiu likes Su Xiaoxiao, doesn't he? The Ouyang family is planning a marriage alliance. I don't know the specifics either. I remember the last house Shuangqiang lived in was also provided by Ouyang Xiu. That's what it is now. Isn't the plot of Shuangqiang also crazy after entering this building? According to the original plot, it should be already in the middle and later stages of the story, Bai Cha said after taking another breath and soaking in water. The novel I read is actually the early stage. Oh, isn't it that we get married first and then love? At this time, Su Xiaoxiao still disliked Long Jingchen very much, but as a superior and subordinate, the two were not even underground lovers. I clicked, there was no ambiguity, let alone getting married. Long Jingchen was just interested on one side. The title of the book is Dragon Young Stand-in Wife, which has not yet become a coquettish wife. I know now. Bai Cha slammed the jar onto the coffee table, splashing some drinks. The key is Ouyang Xiu. Only he can know Su Qing's actions and blend them into the romantic relationship between the male and female leads. I think Ouyang Xiu may know more than us. Bai Cha figured it out and didn't want to watch the rest of the rambling storyline. With a wave of her hand, the barrage dissipated, and today's live broadcast ended successfully. I didn't receive as many gifts as the day before. It's possible that the wealthy fathers gave their points to Daodu, but unfortunately, these points couldn't be transferred to her account. She walked into the bedroom and saw Bai Cha lying upright under the blanket, staring straight at the bedroom door. When she saw Bai Cha looking at him, the blanket covered her head and she pretended to be asleep. After a while, she crawled out on her own. "What did you do?" he asked, clutching the blanket with both hands and stirring it up. "I'm a bit thirsty at night, I went to drink some water," she replied, lifting the blanket and about to get into the bed. Bai Shou quickly squeezed aside, leaving half of the bed empty. The place where 100 heads have been lying is cool and white tea shivers. Bai Shou saw it and moved a little further away. "You seem to always be in a daze, are you all like this?" He muttered softly, his mouth covered in the blanket and unable to speak clearly, while Bai Cha listened vaguely. "What?" she asked. "No." Before Bai Cha could finish speaking, she leaned her head against him and instinctively raised her hand. Bai Cha then obediently rested her head on his shoulder. 100 heads blushed and said, "I'm very cold." "It won't be cold in a while," Bai Cha coaxed a baby and patted his waist and abdomen with her hand. "Hold it for a while longer." The quilt was lifted up, and after a while, 100 muffled voices came from. "Oh." White tea raised the corners of her lips, giving a slight sense of coaxing children. When Bai Shou died, he was a baby. Perhaps he didn't know why he died, or maybe no one knew about this building. His education was comprehensive, except for the part about sex and love, which Bai Cha wouldn't teach him. Whether she was stupid or scumbag, the reason she pulled him back was very simple, just to hold him. Perhaps it's not because of the monotonous, maternal love, but it's just a simple hug that will satisfy her. It's because she continues the pity that countless strange worlds cannot change. Unlike the taskmaster who treats all worlds as games to conquer, she always believes that every plane belongs to their own world, and that everyone is alive and real, rather than a bunch of lifeless data. She no longer went to shoot 100 songs, but tightly wrapped her waist around him through the blanket. "It's just heartache, how could it be so lofty?" Bai Cha murmured. "What do you feel heartbroken about?" "Do you feel heartbroken about him dying from birth, but he has been pampered for 22 years. Soft-hearted towards ghosts and monsters, Bai Cha knows that one day she will receive retribution. But it shouldn't be this world anymore. Long Jingchen, why did you blackmail me again?" "My eldest young master." A man with brown hair and small braids patted the table in Long Jingchen's office, banging it. He was dressed in a fancy suit, with orange sunglasses behind his ears, and threw several takeout boxes onto the table. "I brought you some food. Who else is so kind to you except me? Please do me a favor and pull me out of the blacklist." He hurriedly took the plastic cover of the takeout box open. Inside, there were fresh and salty whisker meat and a bowl of thick golden millet congee with hot air. "Look, I still remember your stomach problem. What I brought you were all light, mouth-nourishing and stomach-nourishing things." Haha. Long Jingchen looked at the words, Wanfu Building, written on the takeout bag and gave Ouyang Xiu a few alms. Carrying takeout, is this the attitude of apologizing? Oh no. Reflection. He tapped his index finger on the table without bending, with a cold expression on his face, reflecting on what he did. Upon seeing this, Ouyang Xiu let go of his snort and collapsed on the sofa, crossing his legs. "I won't reflect," he said as he took out disposable chopsticks from his pants pocket and threw them onto Long Jingchen's desk. "Isn't it just that you said a few words of domineering CEO falling in love with me, as for being so angry?" Long Jingchen took the chopsticks and was about to throw them away when he heard a gurgling sound coming from his stomach. Looking at Ouyang Xiu's teasing expression, he calmly coughed and opened the chopsticks to pick up the meat with wooden whiskers. "I saw Su Qing yesterday." "Su Qing, Miss Su from the Su family." Ouyang Xiu narrowed his eyes alertly and waved his hand the next second. "So what? You're not still interested in Su Qing now, are you?" He suddenly regained his interest, jumped up from the sofa, and came to Long Jingchen. Using his chopsticks, he stuffed meat into his mouth and asked him, "Who do you choose, Su Xiaoxiao or Su Qing?" "It doesn't matter who I choose, doesn't it matter to you? Isn't it well known that Su Qing ran away from home to escape marriage, the eldest young master of the Ouyang family?" "Cut. How did it turn on to me?" Ouyang Xiu smacked his lips in dissatisfaction. "She clearly escaped marriage." Long Jingchen raised his gaze, and Ouyang Xiu turned his head, silently reciting in his heart, "I clearly like you, silly X."